Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Energize Your Online Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Okay, so today we are going to dig into one of our favorite topics, and quite frankly, one of the most important topics in business, and that is messaging. However, we have a lot to go through. So fair warning, we're actually going to, not warning, but just a heads up, we're going to split this into 2 episodes. We have 10 topics that we're going to go through. All of them are very important. So if you catch this one, well, you obviously are, you're here, make sure to listen to or watch the second episode as well. And we'll give you the same warning in the second episode, but you don't need it because you're here already. Oh, so confusing. Anyway, Kate, is there any preface that you want to offer before we get into things?
Yes, that there's no order to these in terms of, the first one is certainly the most important, but beyond that, I would say they're all of equal importance. So if you're like, well, I 1 through 5 and I don't need to listen to the next ones, listen to all of them. Obviously, there's a lot to consider and a lot to think about, but you need to think about all of it.
Absolutely. Excellent point. I think the only other thing that I would add is that this is kind of a lot of information, but we broke it down into 10 pieces to try to give you kind of a checklist. Writing, I will tell you as a copywriter, and Kate will tell you as a copywriter, we have our professional history as copywriters before getting into business. The hardest person to write for, the hardest business to write for is your own. So if you find some of these things challenging, you are absolutely not alone. But the key is the more that you focus on these points and the more that you practice them as you create your messaging, the easier it will get for you. And again, we gave you 10 because we intended them really kind of as obviously key information, but also you can kind of use it as a checklist as you're looking at creating your writing, but as you're even evaluating things that you have written. Because any writer, any copywriter will tell you that the actual writing is only a portion of doing your copywriting, doing your messaging, that kind of thing. It's editing is also a very, very important part. Anybody worth their salt, and because we know how important messaging is, take the time to write it. Yes, absolutely, of course, but take some time to step away and then come back to it and edit it. And these 10 will kind of give you a good checklist to go through. And very quickly, before we dig in, we wanted to let you know that obviously this is all concepts that Kate and I know very well as copywriters and teachers of copy. But this particular list we culled from a book that I wrote last year called Copywriting Strategies. So by yours truly, Nicki Krosick. And we'll put the link to the show notes. But so if you're looking for more detailed information, exercises, that kind of thing, you are welcome to purchase it. No pressure. But if you want more info, we'll put the link in the show notes. Okay, so let's dig in. Kate, what's our first one?
Our first one is having a purpose and a plan. And I think this hits on what Nicki just said about, editing being such an important part of the process, because this one is where you want to start, but it's also where you want to end. You want to review your purpose and plan once you've actually written the copy before you're about to push it out into the world to really make sure that you've hit on what you need to hit on. And so one of the first things that, you need to hit on to identify the purpose of the project was really defining what you are setting out to accomplish. What is your goal? And so I think breaking these copy projects down. So if you are building an email funnel, to really take this approach for each holistically, obviously, but to really start with each email, once you kind of have an outline of, okay, this is the goal, here's how I need to get to that goal, then for each email to think, okay, what is the purpose of this specific email within this email funnel? So applying this process to bigger projects, yes. So an email funnel, a website, you want to do it for the website, yes, but each individual page should also have its own purpose and its own plan.
Yeah, I think it's so common for business owners to sit down and go, oh, I have to send out an email. I send out a weekly email. I have to send out an email. And okay, so I'm just going to write an email without sitting down and going, okay, why am I writing this email? Because nothing that we put out in the world should be purposeless. There should be a reason that we give anybody any piece of information, that we reach out to them. Number one, because we have all kinds of important things to convey to them. But number two, because if you just start sending stuff out without it being well thought through, without a purpose, we'll get into the benefit in a little bit, but without it having a benefit to the person who's reading it, they're going to stop reading. I mean, I'm sure we've all gotten emails and opened it up and gone, why are you even sending this to me? I don't care what you did last week, that kind of thing. So it really needs to, before you think, I have to send an email, or I have to do a post, or I have to put together a funnel, and that funnel has to have 4 emails. Before you think in terms of the what, think in terms of the why. Why do they have to get this information?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you're thinking about the purpose too, you might come up with 3 different purposes of, well, I need them to do this, and I want them to do this, and I need it for this. And at that point, if you're identifying multiple things going on, that's a case where you'd want to revisit how the what of, okay, so maybe it's not 1 email if I have 3 things I want to do out of this. Each one should have its own really focused purpose. And yeah, you might have a secondary call to action within your email. Mm-hmm. So maybe the purpose is, I need them to know that I have this offer and it's only going to be this price for 1 more day. And then maybe you have a secondary call to action somewhere that's talking about testimonials and people that have used this offer to accomplish something, but that's not your main focus. It's kind of a secondary supporting focus of the piece. But you wouldn't want to obviously combine that with, oh, we have, this offer lasting for 1 more day, and here's this other offer that we're offering at the same time, and confuse and really split the focus. You want to think of one singular purpose for whatever it is that you're setting out to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. What do you want them to do? What action do you want them to take? Which, quite frankly, every email should be something that should have an action that you want them to take. I know some people are like, well, but I'm just sending out an email with information. No, even if your action is to send them to read more of a blog post, or to listen to a podcast, or even just, hey, keep your eyes on your inbox because I have an important email coming tomorrow. There should be some next step that you give them, because that increases engagement. But also, why is that next step important? Why do you want them to take this action? What are you trying to accomplish by getting them to take this action? Which again, kind of gets back to the purpose. What is the purpose? Are you trying to drive them to a sales page? Are you trying to get them to listen to a podcast episode so that they're nurtured a little bit more? They learn more about your brand, or they learn something. You build the know, like, and trust factor. What is the purpose of this messaging?
Mm-hmm. And then once you figure out what that purpose is for you, it's really, and I know Nicki hinted at this, but digging into the benefit for the audience then at that point. Okay, I want them to buy this. I want them to listen to this. I want them to download this. That's all well and good, but why should they do it? What's in it for them? What are they going to get if they do the action that you want them to take? You're obviously going to get something very different out of the action, them taking the action, than they're going to get. But they need to know, they need to really be motivated to take that action, and they need to know why. If they don't understand what they're going to get when they do whatever it is that you want them to do, then they're not going to be motivated to take that action.
Mm-hmm. I've seen so many emails that follow us on Instagram. Okay, but why? I know that the person who's sending it wants me to follow on Instagram so that they can, send, so that I'll have more chance of seeing their information, all that kind of stuff. But me, as the receiver, the recipient of the email, what am I getting out of following you on Instagram? You have to tell people what that benefit to them is.
Yeah, no one's going to take the time to infer what that is. I mean, we might as marketers, and you might in your own emails, because this is what you do for a living. So it seems obvious to you. Of course, I'd follow this person. Maybe I'll get discounts. Maybe there'll be giveaways. Maybe there'll be information I can't get anywhere else. Maybe I'll learn something new. But your audience doesn't know that, and they're not jumping to any sort of conclusions about what they'll get, because they probably already follow hundreds, if not thousands potentially, of people on Instagram. And so there's so much information. So what is the incentive for adding another thing to their feed?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just going to clutter it? Is it just going to be stuff that they don't actually care about? Or is it going to be something of value that they want?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So really dialing into what the information is, what the message is that your audience needs to receive in order to desire to take this action as much as you want them to take that action.
Mm-hmm.
And then really, what is the clearest way that, and I know this is a lot in number one, don't worry, they're not all going to be this packed, but as Kate said, this number one is a big overarching one. What is the clearest way that you can ask them to take the action that you want them to take? I think a lot of people think in terms of call to action, and they think, well, I have to say, click here to get blah, 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 and just all kinds of stuff. Or, become part of the posse here, friend, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Or I want in. And I'm like, what am I getting in on?
In on what? Exactly. Exactly. The clearer your call to action can be, the better. There's a great book, and I think it was actually a design book, but it really is applicable for copywriting, for messaging as well. And it's called Don't Make Them Think. And the concept is don't make them guess at what's going to happen. Don't make them guess at what you want them to do. Don't make them have to think about it. Just make it easy. If you want them to follow you on Instagram, obviously you will have given all kinds of context and all kinds of benefits for them, but the actual link should be click here to follow us now, or follow us on Instagram here or now. So, but my point is, I don't write copy on the fly. I'm a copywriter, not a copy speaker. But the point is that clarity and simplicity are always the way that you should go when it comes to your call to action. Yes, use your brand voice in all kinds of other places, but for your call to action, think in terms of clarity and simplicity.
Yeah, you want your audience to know exactly where they're going to go if they click that button. So if I see something that says, if follow us on Instagram, I would expect then the Instagram page to pop up and I can then follow them from there. If it says buy now, I'd expect it to go to a product page, that sort of thing. And so if it's not clear where they're going to go, or you send them somewhere completely that doesn't match up, you're probably going to have a high bounce rate of people saying, well, okay, I clicked this button thinking this one thing, and now I'm here. This is wrong. Bye. They're not going to spend time figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly. And then also that's going to carry through to all of your other emails. Once they have a bad interaction with you and they're like, wait, what happened? That increases the likelihood that they're going to stop opening your emails because they know that they have that kind of interaction with you. Okay, so big long one for number one. Again, they're not all going to be that long, but they're all important. So number two, and we say this with so much love and so much support, but it is not about you. We, especially business owners, solopreneurs, and or people who work from home or work, and even if you're not a solopreneur, I will tell you that I'm not a solopreneur. We have a fantastic team, but I do spend a lot of time in my own head, and you can probably relate to that. The problem is that when you spend a lot of time in your own head, focused on your own offer, on your own product, on your own service, whatever it is, you're thinking a lot about what you want to tell people, what's important to you. But what's important to you is not necessarily the same thing that's important to your target audience. So when you are writing your messaging, you kind of have to set yourself aside and put yourself in your target audience's shoes and figure out what they want and need to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also comes out in the way that you say it too, with your messaging, the actual copy that you end up writing. If you're very focused in your own head, it's going to come out sounding like how you think it should sound, which isn't necessarily how your ideal customer talks about your product, offer, service, et cetera. So as much as you can, looking outward, looking what are people saying? What are your customers saying? Talking to your actual customers. What are they finding useful about your product, service, offer? What are they hung up on maybe? What are some of the folks who haven't purchased? What are they saying? What are their objections about it? And getting more information to really connect with this ideal audience so that you can make it more about them and you can best serve them with the messaging that's going to resonate the most with them.
Yeah. There's a concept of sell them the chocolate, give them the vegetables, in that there's sometimes things people want, the flashy things, but we know that they need these other elements as well. And I think the maybe the more background or foundational elements, or less fun and flashy things, right? And I think that sometimes as business owners, we're like, but this is the important stuff. This is the stuff. But you can't convince someone to want something if they just don't. Now, once they're in the program, once you've sold them on the chocolate and they're like, ooh, yes, then you can teach them, you can give them the vegetables, and once they're in your program, they can go, oh, I understand why this is so important, and all that kind of thing. But if they fundamentally don't want to buy the vegetables, like I always think of like a little kid at the table, which, don't get me wrong, feed your children vegetables anyway. However, sell them on the chocolate, because that's already what they want to buy. Don't try to force your audience to buy something that they don't want. Sell them what they want, and then give them all the other stuff that you need, all the nutrients that they need to go along with it.
And so point number 3, we touched on this earlier, of having a purpose, speaking to the benefit to your audience. But really, number 3, we're breaking out, focus on the benefit. And so I think identifying the benefit is an exercise in itself. So you might want to put this as you're going through number 1, know that this is a part of your checklist as well, to really dive into what the benefit is. Because I think what we see most often is people who haven't dug deep enough into the benefit. And so they come up with what they think the benefit is, but it's not the strongest that it could be. It's, and maybe the place to start too is talking what a benefit actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. So the benefit is what they're going to get out of it. What is their result? What do they get to take home, in a way, or what is their transformation? And a feature is kind of just what it sounds. It's a detail of it. The example I always use, which actually I think I started using it way back when we started teaching copywriters, is the concept of a 7-blade razor. And I think at the time that they didn't even have 7-blade razors, and I believe now there is. So
it feels like aggressively. Yeah.
Am I
they
predicting
keep adding
the future?
more?
Perhaps. Yes. Right. Okay.
Let's say 10 now.
Razor.
Yeah.
10-blade razor. So a 10-blade razor. Whoa, amazing. So what are the features and benefits of a 10-blade razor? Well, it's a new, exciting 10-blade razor. Okay, 10 blades. Awesome. That's a amazing feature. Super. What do they get out of 10 blades? Well, it's likely that those 10 blades give them the cleanest, closest, smoothest shave that they've ever experienced. So these are the two different things. The feature is the fact that it has 10 blades. The benefit is what they get out of it. That's the smoothest, softest, best shave in the world. And it's the same thing. Sometimes we'll list out our, well, this is a 6-module course with 5 videos in each. Okay, super. That's a description of it. Those are details. But what do they get in each of those modules? Module 1 is XYZ. Okay, what do they get out of that module? What are they going to learn? What is the transformation going to be? What is the end benefit for them? And it's very easy as business owners, because we've created these modules and these videos, and they get group coaching. And this is another element of don't make them think. We say, you get group coaching. Okay, great. But technically, that's a feature of your program. What are they going to get out of that group coaching? Well, maybe it's personalized support. Maybe it's answers to their questions. Maybe it's a feeling of community, so they know they're never any number of things. But for everything that you're talking about, make sure that you're not just focusing on the features, which can be very easy for us business owners, but you're also focusing on the benefit, what your target audience is going to get out of it.
Yeah, I think those examples, anything with numbers, lifetime access, on the surface, you think, well, that sounds great, right? The more videos, the better. The more it's 10 hours of video or of education. But to the user, they don't have context for what that means. If your program has 10 hours and this other program has 20 or whatever, what does that even mean? Is it quality? Is it quantity? Is it what does that mean?
Right. Well, and think of if someone said to you, ooh, I have a new program for you and it's 10 hours of videos. Wouldn't you be like, oh, geez, 10 hours? Whereas if they're like, ooh, there's a new season of White Lotus and they brought back Jennifer Coolidge somehow. And then you'd be going, oh, interesting. And it's exciting. And there's mystery and intrigue. And then you are engaged, because it's all about the benefit, what you're going to get out of it, not just... Nobody wants more videos. Nobody wants more
Well, even lifetime access, you
modules.
think that's like great, but people might be like, well, why do I need that? You get why it's great. You have lots of reasons, but it's getting translating what seems obvious to you to the page so that your users can understand, oh, lifetime access. That means I can, if life gets in the way, I can pick back up where I left off. I'm never left stranded. I don't have to do it on someone else's timeline. I can do it on my timeline. And so all of these things that can relate to them and what they get out of it versus just making the assumption that of course they know, or of course they think this is great. And I think group coaching is another great example where sometimes people, especially like introverted folks who are like, well, I don't want to participate in group coaching. I don't have time, or I don't see the value in that and want to take part. And then when they get into it though, they realize how important and how valuable it is to have that support network. So it's crucial for those folks too, who maybe have never participated in a group coaching, maybe are hesitant to do so for any number of reasons. We have our ideal customer and we know, who they are, but each person, I feel like there's variability within that, right? Of how they want to take part in a program. And so you might have people as part of your ideal audience that are just as ideal of a consumer, but just have that hang up of like, I don't want to participate in group coaching, or I don't see the value. So making sure they understand that is really, really important.
Yeah. And it comes back to that. Don't make them figure it out themselves. Just tell them why it's a benefit for them. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Number 4, be attention grabbing, not clickbaiting. And we'll talk about what clickbait actually is, because I think there's some confusion about that. But you need to be genuinely interesting. If you want people to open your emails, you need to have a compelling subject line. If you want someone to read further on your sales page, you need to have a compelling headline. If you want someone to click through to your sales page, you need to have compelling copy in there. And I know some people are like, well, okay, that's easier said than done. How do I grab their attention? How do I make it interesting? And there are really kind of 2 ways. Number 1, see previous point, focus on the benefit. What are they going to get out of it? Right? That's number 1. And number 2 is to incite their curiosity, make them go, ooh, okay, this is something that I want to know more about.
Yeah, I think one of the, to use an example, and I don't have the exact subject line off the top of my head, but in one of our funnels you have an interesting story of, business lessons for my Uber driver or something like that, where it was like, oh, Uber, like it incites that curiosity of, okay, what does an Uber driver have to tell me about business? It's something unexpected. It's a juxtaposition that you haven't seen anywhere else, that it stands out because of that. And so you want to stand out. And I know this kind of, not to get off on a tangent, but one of the most important things when identifying your brand voice is to sound unique. It's very tempting to sound like everyone else in your space. And well, they're talking about their offer like this, and we have a similar offer, so we have to say that something very similar, when in fact you want to stand out. You want to be in someone's inbox with something they haven't seen before. Otherwise, it's just going to kind of blend in with the rest of the stuff.
And the key too is that it has to be something that is interesting to your target audience. If in that email subject line we just said something my Uber driver told me, I can tell you the open rate would be a lot less, because people are going, I don't care, and delete. Whereas when we say, again, whatever the exact, but something along the lines of the big business reasons or business.
Best business advice that I got.
Best business advice from my Uber driver. I might even be like, and why you need to know, or something like that. Because I'm not just I'm telling you what's going to be in that email. I'm kind of teasing what's going to be in that email, but I'm also making it relevant to the target audience. I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of the curiosity subject lines, is that they don't actually make it interesting. I see so many subject lines that are like, what I did last week, or the thing I'll never do again. And I think people think, well, I'm not telling them what that thing is. Sure, but you're also not telling them anything about it. And so you have to connect it to your target audience in some way, even if it's something, the the thing that I know you and I both do that I will never, ever do again. And I would still even dig in and probably has to talk a little bit more about what that topic is, that kind of thing. But you need to connect it back to the target audience. You need to give a little bit more detail to make your target audience interested. If you go way too vague, like I said, the what I did last week, like, oh God, nobody cares what you did last week. You could have done the most amazing thing last week, but because your subject line, you could have trained sharks to ride underneath your feet like jet skis, which that would be cool.
Delightful.
But if that's in the body of your email and the subject line of your email is what I did last week, nobody's going to find out about your shark jet skis because nobody's going to open your email because the subject line is just so boring.
Yeah, I think specificity is the key. So for example, if you did something like if you were in the health and wellness space and that's your thing, is it the number one health mistake I know you and I are both making that I want to tell you about or whatever, something that gives that connection of like, okay, this is the subject matter and this is why it's being sent to me. And I signed up for this because I care about health and wellness versus a lot of people might miss the from line. And so they might not have that context of who it's coming from. If they're just reading their subject lines in their email, it's not going to get them to click just inherently. And then I think the other big mistake, when we're talking about clickbait is really having a really powerful curiosity driven headline or subject line, headline, whatever it is. Or even a really big benefit to the consumer of like, I always think of the, lose 500 pounds in 2 days and blah, 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 like the magic secret. And we all know these things. It's like, but they get clicks. But they become clickbait when obviously something like that of lose 500 pounds in 2 days isn't possible. You can't pay that off. So if you don't pay it off, that's when it turns into clickbait versus an effective subject line, headline, et cetera.
Exactly. If you have a subject line or a headline that says something like, my accountant told me this tip that will save me $200,000 in taxes, and here's what you need to know. And they go in there and it's actually not a tip, or it's not, it's
like hire my accountant to find out.
Exactly. If you don't pay off that information, that's when something is clickbait. People get confused and think that clickbait is anything interesting to try to get people to click. But the concept of, but here's the thing, we want people to click. So the concept of clickbait really is something really interesting that gets people to click, but then never actually gets paid off with the real piece of information. And I know you're thinking, well, if I have the concept in the subject line, if I pique their interest in the subject line, do I have to pay it off in the email? No, you can then direct them to click to your blog or your podcast or whatever to get the full information. But maybe you want to tease it just a little bit more about, maybe give a little bit more details in that email so to click over. So if not, one more click does not then make it clickbait because we have to get them to open the email and then we have to get them to click over to wherever you have that full information. But you do have to pay it off. If you give them something interesting, it has to be something that you then deliver on. Otherwise, this is another opportunity to really lose your audience's trust. If they open and they go, whoa, this is really interesting, and then they click through and you don't actually give them that information, they're going to stop opening your emails. And then just one more point before we get on to the next part of this is that take some time. Once you've written subject lines, and so many people write subject lines last, and you can, that's fine, but don't do it as a throwaway activity. Like, oh, I've put in all this information, or I put in all this great work into my email, and now, oh, I just need a subject line. Just write it off real quick. Take some time with your subject line. And then after you've written your subject line, get up, walk away, do something else, do the dishes, whatever it is you need to do, something to clear your mind, and then come back and put yourself in your target audience's shoes. And if you got that in your inbox, would you open it genuinely and be gentle, but be tough on yourself, gentle but tough. If you would go, nah, you know what, if that came in my inbox and I were my target audience, I probably wouldn't open it. Then you need to do a little bit more work on it, do some tweaking, or try a totally different direction. And that by that same token, when you get emails in your inbox, start to think about those subject lines. When you open an email, go, oh, now wait a minute, what was it about that subject line that got me to open? Why did I, and maybe you can take notes on it. You obviously don't want to steal anybody's subject lines, but like, oh, I really liked how he made me interested in this, or oh, I like this turn of phrase, or she said this, or even emails from bigger corporations or that kind of thing. And by that same token, when you delete an email, and you can even go into your deleted items folder and go, what was it about these that didn't get me to open? What was not intriguing? And keep an eye out for those as well.
And so the final one, at least for this episode, again, there are 5 more that we highly encourage you to listen to on our next episode. But for now, the next thing is holding your audience's attention. And so I'm going to say this, and I say this gently as well with a lot of things, is that a lot of times we write and we write an email, or we write a web page, or we write whatever, and we try to pack so much into it that we find interesting, but is either something the audience doesn't need to know at all, something the audience doesn't need to know right in this moment, something the audience doesn't care about, but we care about, that we want them to care about, again, with the kind of chocolate vegetables analogy. So thinking about, as you're going through each piece, and again, go back to purpose for the clickbait, for the benefits. What is the purpose of this communication right now in this moment? If it doesn't serve that purpose, cut that copy. And I know it's hard to do that. And so what I would highly recommend is just having a Google Doc or Word doc or whatever you use to take sections. It might be sections, it might be headlines, it might be subject lines, it might be calls to action that you think, oh, this is really good. But if I'm being honest with myself, it's not the right piece of copy. It's not the right messaging for this specific communication. And so put that into a doc that you have that you can repurpose later. So maybe down the line, maybe you're writing an email funnel and you say, this is what's right for this first email, but oh, some of this might be useful for, some of the messages down the line. And so then you can reference that doc that you have. You're not getting rid of work you've done, but you are being very ruthless in what you're choosing to put out into the world in that moment, and saying, this is what my audience needs to know right now. This other stuff is just distracting them. It is taking away from the main purpose. It is not supporting the benefit that I'm trying to communicate in this piece. And really everything should just be hyper focused. Something I feel like I see a lot is on homepages. And, you might have different sections on the page, but often the messages get mixed up into, so here I'm talking about myself and where my background and why that's important, but I'm also in that same section talking about my offer and what it is in it for the audience, versus having those things separated out to say, okay, this is my offer and why it's so important and great and why my audience should use it. And then here's a section about me and why I am the best person to support them in this journey or this whatever. Often we just mix themes. And so starting to identify as you go through your copy of just saying, okay, what topics am I hitting on in this area? And if it's more than one, okay, this needs to be taken out and put somewhere else.
Yeah. I think that sometimes when we think, well, oh, I've gotten their attention, then they're just going to stick with me. But that's not the case. I mean, when you think of yourself, that sometimes you open an email like, oh, great subject line, I want to know what that's about. And you start reading and you go, I don't care anymore. And that's what we want to avoid, right? We want to get them to open with that subject line. We want to catch their attention. And same thing with on a page, on maybe a sales page, a homepage, something, get their attention, make them go, oh, I want to read. And as we go through the copy on that page, in that email, wherever it is, on a social post for that matter, that we keep their attention by giving them information that is pertinent to that main point. Information is pertinent to that initial hook, the thing that caught their attention to begin with. And that's exactly what Kate's saying about taking out any extraneous stuff. And this is kind of also, we get back to that concept of writing versus editing. When you're writing something the first time, throw it all in there. Absolutely. For writing it first time through, sure. Don't stop yourself there. If, I suppose there are different types of processes, but our recommendation would be first draft, throw it all in there. Sure. And then in your editing, go through and, like Kate said, be gently ruthless. Go through, Is this a point that they really need to know? Does this connect back to the main topic? Is this going to increase the chance? Is this going to keep their attention? Does this give them more details about the main topic? Is this something that is going to make them want to take action? And if not, like Kate said, grab it, save it in a different Google Doc, whatever, maybe useful later. But if it doesn't pay off that main hook that got them in, it's not going to hold their attention. And then you're going to lose them and they're not going to take that action. Why do they need to? Why is this something they need to know? And why do they need to know right now? Okay, so that's where we are going to wrap up the first 5 of the 10. Again, in the next episode, we are going to have the next 5, also all very important. So it's strongly recommend, if you're not following us already, follow us so you can just get that episode automatically. And of course, if you want even more information, maybe some exercises to go along with it, we'll put the link to my book in the show notes. No pressure. Buy it if you want to. Don't buy it if you don't want to. But you will find just more details, more concepts, exercises, and ways to improve your own copywriting skills. And also, if you want to outsource to a copywriter, you can be an even better informed client to make sure that you get the best results that you can. Okay, so with that, everything's in the show notes, and we will catch you back for part 2 of this series in just a little bit. So we'll see you then. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do you want to learn how to sell and scale your offer on autopilot every single day without the chaos of live launching or the low conversions of Evergreen? Who doesn't, right? Get our free on-demand video training at circuitsalessystem.com/free. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel to make sure you never miss a video. We'll catch you next time.